So hi everybody, welcome to today's NBS webinar, Managing Risk with the Construction Information Service, or CIS. And this is in partnership with our joint venture partners, Accurus. So today's webinar is going to last about 45 to 50 minutes. Attendees' microphones will be muted, but please ask as many questions as you like using the question box on the screen, and we'll follow up with these after this session. The webinar is going to be in 3 parts today. Immediately to start with from myself, it's going to be an introduction to NBS and CIS. We'll just have a quick look at the two platforms and the content within them. Then we're going to have a panel discussion. You see our panelists on the screen at the moment, and then finish looking at how you can get more support and find out more about CIS. But also joining me today and running the panel session is Tina Petersons, Associate Director of Customer Education at Accurus. And joining Tina for the second part of this webinar will be Richard Battye, Associate and Specification Writer at Purcell, and Gary Neal, Head of Fire at Skanska. So we'll look at sort of specifications and standards from both the building design point of view and also the construction point of view. Just going to do a brief introduction now to the NBS and CIS platforms, and we'll start with CIS, Construction Information Service, which actually has its 30-year anniversary. I think it's his birthday this year, 1994, and it's always been sort of joint venture. So it started with RIBA group with NBS doing the software development there, and it's gone from sort of technical indexes, IHS, S&P Global, to now a joint venture between NBS and Accurus. 26,000 documents inside the service, like all online platform from 400 publishers. So I know, like, I'm trying to picture 26,000 documents. I couldn't imagine how big that physical library would be. When I first started working for NBS, we did have a huge physical library on our in our basement, loads of British standards, catalogs, approved documents, etc., etc. But yeah, all 26,000 documents online now in the Construction Information Service. And in terms of the publishers, like some of the leading publishers of construction information for UK and Ireland. So just like start maybe with the obvious one, BSI, British Standards Institution. And you can see we've got thousands of standards. You just filter that, like newest first, and scan down the left-hand side there. You see like every week there's new sort of standards coming out, standards being revised there from BSI. Like another, in terms of the most downloaded documents, BISRIA got hundreds of documents, technical guides from BISRIA building for building services. Have a looked at another one, like SCI, Steel Construction Institute, again, hundreds of advisory notes. CIBSE, got all the different guides from CIBSE, and have a look, RIBA, another one of NBS's joint venture partners, got the RIBA publishing collection there, 290 documents. Again, if we just have a little look at sort of newest first, you've got the sort of books, publishing documents in addition to things like the standards from BSI. And in the old days, physical libraries, but now as an organization across your offices, you can subscribe to the Construction Information Service and get these delivered to your fingertips through the Construction Information Service. As you'd expect, there's a really good search engine as well. So if there's a particular publication you're after, you can just start typing. And as you start typing, you get the best match documents on the left-hand side, or you can sort of do a free text search as well. There's different phrases there. But if I know I want the latest RIBA Principal Designer's Guide, which came out, I think it was last month, I can jump there and just download that. And you get a bit of knowledge provided by the NBS team in terms of a bit of an abstract, and it pulls out some of the metadata, like when it was published, who the author was. And we tag that up against sort of key topics there. So you can link similar documents together. You can put comments in, which you can share with your colleagues as well. So across your practice, you can have the sort of little notes that you put against the different documents. For standards, you probably know by the number. So maybe you're an expert on masonry walls and you know they're covered by the sort of 771 series from British Standards. As soon as you put 2 or 3 numbers there, it suggests them. You can sort of refine that a little bit, and you've got sort of all of the publications there in the 771 series of standards. And if I just have a look at this one here, which I think covers your sort of clear bricks and things, you can see the dates, 2015 coming down to the latest sort of technical amendment in 2016 there. Confirmation that this is the current standard. And we've got that history there as well. So you can go back and see when it was sort of previous, all the way back, like a big chain, a big thread of probably back to the 1980s when this first standard was first published. So a big collection of documents. You can browse by publisher, you can search by the title, and you can see how historically they go back, pardon me, in time. You can search for topics as well. So if I was interested in standards related to curtain walling, you see at the top there, it's a phrase that's sort of well used in the industry. So you can click here and see lots of standards that are relevant to curtain walling. Architects Journal Focus, British Standards, lots of different publications around curtain walling. And you can filter this as well. So I could say, look, I want to do a filter and just show me what's been published this year relevant to curtain walling. And we got a British standard there that was published recently, looking to the resistance of a wind load. You see that replaced the sort of withdrawn standard on the right-hand side. And on the homepage itself, on the right-hand side, you get a list of which documents and standards are newly in. Department of the Economy Action Plan 2024, the Path for Net Zero Energy, and the latest sort of revised standards there as well. One of the nice features inside of CIS is being able to create your own sort of project folders, which you can name around. It could be a project itself, or it could be a sort of topic or what have you. But I could come and say, like, add a new folder here, and I'll call it Net Zero. And that's going to create a little folder from, just like you do in the old days with a physical library where you maybe put your books in a little tray or what have you. I can put standards relevant to Net Zero in this project folder. So let's just show how you do that. You search for Net Zero. Let's have a look at the newest ones that are on the left-hand side here. Let's just pull this one out. So yeah, I can download and read the standard and add comments around it, etc. But when I click Save to Folder, it's going to put a copy of that particular document in the Net Zero project that I've created there. And that's now saved into that folder. So I can jump across now and sort of like slowly build up a set of sort of collection of documents there. And I can share those with colleagues as well. So other people on the same subscription as myself, I could say share this folder with maybe all of the users in the office. Or I could come and just say, like, I'd like to share this one with Andrew Brooke and Jane Milner. And that's going to share the Net Zero project folder with them. So you're just building up. So other people have shared folders with me here. So if I go to this one here, I see my colleague, I think Chris Fick, has created a folder around contracts. And I've shared sort of JCT, RIBA, professional services contract there with myself and others in the office. Have a look at what other ones I've done here. I've got a little folder for BIM where I've got a number of standards from the 19650 series there. You'll notice on the useful publications folder that I've created, there's just a little green icon coming up against it. And if I click on there, you'll see what that's doing is it's alerting you visually when a particular publication has been withdrawn and replaced with a newer version. So if we drop down, I think we actually looked at this one earlier here, the RIBA Health and Safety Guide, which was originally published in 2020, that's been withdrawn and it's been replaced, we see the top right here, by the RIBA Health and Safety Guide 2nd edition. So that's quite useful. There'll be some useful new content in there, brought up to date. So what I can do here is just click this button here, replace, and that's going to take the old version out of my folder and replace it with the second edition. Keep a copy of the original document there, but I'll not. And you'll see that little green icon has now changed, and I've got the second edition, which looks like the NBS abstract just says it's been updated in accordance with the Building Safety Act. That was that came out in 2022, and it was published just before Christmas there. So a quite useful area there. The folders, you can also get content alerts sort of sent weekly to your inbox as well. So you probably log on to CIS quite a lot, but it's quite nice maybe on a Monday just receiving an email, and you can see which standards are coming in general. But you can also say, look, I'd like to have an email notification for my net zero folder, which I've created. And there's also curated interests as well. So key topics for the industry that the NBS content team sort of pull together from the standards and publications inside of CIS. And you can get email notifications on these as well. So the ones in blue there, sustainability, BIM, health and safety, new legislation, that's going to come into my inbox. It's a sort of consolidated list now. And maybe the final thing I was wanting to show here is look at obviously the help and the tutorial in the Learning Center, but saved searches are quite nice. So once you've done a search and you've sort of filtered it to your needs, you can save those searches as well. So you then to run that search again and see the latest documents like biodiversity this year. I've spelled that slightly incorrectly, but it doesn't matter. That's remembered the filters, and there's all of the different publications relevant to biodiversity that have been published in 2024. And here's a particular document from DEFRA there. So hopefully, in terms of CIS, it's a great job in terms of taking what used to be in the olden days big physical libraries with 1 or 2 copies of every book into some modern digital tool that can share knowledge from 26,000 up to 26,000 different publications across your practice. One of the great things for our NBS users is this is integrated into the NBS specification system. So if I jump a lot across the NBS Chorus, imagine I'm writing a project specification for this school. I can come into the specification I'm writing. Let's say it's a specification for a sprinkler system. If you want to know more about Chorus, we have full webinars on Chorus, but I'm jumping straight in assuming that people have used Chorus to write specifications. But here's our template specification for sprinkler systems. Not many of the decisions have been made yet, but if I just jump down to the specification clause covering the design of sprinkler systems by, say, a specialist subcontractor, you'll see that there's lots of hyperlinks in the guidance on the right-hand side and in the specification itself. And when you click on these standards and guides, so Guide E from CIBSE, that's going to take you across to a sort of summary page on the nbs.com. And then, assuming you're a subscriber to CIS, you can just click download from CIS, and there's the 4th edition of Fire Safety Engineering technical guide from CIBSE there at the fingertips. We'll do the same example with a British standard there. It jumps across. Summary information there on the nbs.com and download from CIS. So come in there. There's the download button if you want to download it straight away. And if at that point you did want to save it to a folder, you've got the save to folder and comments box there as well. So a little example there in terms of design standard for an entire system. Like getting down to the nitty gritty of just a particular product. Like we looked at bricks earlier. If I jump down to the clay brick, which forms part of a masonry wall system, you'll see the NBS template for clay bricks here has been authored around the terminology used in the standard. So the mean value T1, T2, TM as defined in BSEN 771, compressive strength as defined in BS 77, 1.1, etc. You just need to click on these links. And again, it takes you straight through to the NBS summary page and then jumps you through to CIS to get the document itself. And then I think the final thing is when this NBS commentary or the clause structure changes because standards get replaced and updated, those notifications come through to you using the NBS Chorus tool. So if I just jump across the Newtown High School project again and come into this specification, you'll see that 20 of the clauses in this specification have been updated by the NBS technical authors. So I'll jump down here. These have all had somewhere between a minor tweak or a sort of major change. And you can click on any of these, I think, warning signs. And it'll say, like, this is what the original, this is what your NBS clause looks like in your project spec in your Office Master. And here's the newly added items or the updated items in the specification clause itself and in the guidance. So if we have a little look here, you can see where standards have been updated. And it's a bit like painting a bridge. Like up here in Newcastle, the Tyne Bridge is getting painted at the moment, but it never stops. Every week, every month, new standards, new publications, new regulations are coming out, and the NBS team work very hard keeping the content as up to date as possible with these standards, and then pushing that out to our NBS subscribers with all of the hyperlinks in place, so that you don't have to do that job yourself. And if you want this clause to be updated, you just click Update Clause, and it'll bring this latest version into your Office Master, into your project spec. Or you can decide to ignore these changes because the project's maybe gone beyond tender and it's sort of fixed in terms of the spec's not going to get updated. I think the last thing to mention before I pass on to the sort of discussion panel is that CIS comes in a number of different supplements. So we're aware that like big, large, multidisciplinary practice doing design and build and FM functions and need probably all of those 26,000 standards. Whereas if maybe you're just involved in mechanical and electrical or just involved in civil and structural, you can buy sort of different sort of supplements there. So if you go to the NBS website or you go to the Accurus website, links sort of later on, you can sort of find out all about the different sort of subscription offices, subscription options as part of that CIS service. So that's all from me now. We'll now sort of pass on to Tina for the next part of the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. As Stephen mentioned at the start, my name is Tina Petersens. I manage the customer education team at Accurus. Lovely to be here. And I am obviously here with Richard and Gary, and I'd ask both of you to maybe just give a quick introduction to yourself. I know Stephen mentioned that we're all here together today, but maybe if you could just give a quick introduction. Let's go ahead and start with you, Richard.
Hi, good morning. My name is Richard Battye. I'm a specification writer at Purcell Architects, and I've been an architect since 2005, working on a whole range of new build and refurbished projects across many different sectors.
Wonderful. And Gary, would you mind introducing yourself?
Good morning, everyone. My name's Gary Neal, and I'm Head of Fire for Skanska UK. We're a Tier 1 construction company, and we pride ourselves on delivering safe environments for our customers. I've been involved in the fire industry since 1987, and that was a consequence of the fire at King's Cross. So consequently, I've had a long relationship with fire through construction, and I hope that my contribution has made a valuable change in how we work and make things safer generally.
Thank you, Gary. I'm sure it has. Wonderful. Well, you both, Richard, Gary, you both have experience with the tools that Stephen's just introduced to us. So we are very happy to have you here, and hope to get a couple answers from you to a few questions that we have. So first, I think we'd like to kind of start looking at things from a building designer's point of view. So I think I'm going to come to you first, Richard, here. Few questions. Firstly, when you're putting together kind of project information, how do you reference and understand standards?
That's a good question, and it made me think. It was making me think about really how we use all the tools that are available to. And I think I first actually met standards really and understood what they were through using NBS to write specifications as an architect. I think that's when I really first understood what they were and that they were really useful. And I thought one sort of standard that may be useful just to talk about as a point, I suppose, is the very exciting BS 8204, which is for screeds. And I just thought I'd bring up I can share my screen, bring up a specification that I worked on recently. And this is a specification for a small building in the Isles of Scilly. And BS 8204, the specification for screeds, and anyone who's used screeds would know that they're fairly tricky things. And often we have hard floor finishes on floating and heated screeds. And the BS is really good in guidance on how big they should be and the base sizes and where your movement should be. And it's I think a good example for me where you really want to understand the standard so you can get your design right, because no one wants their floors to crack. And if you need to decide, you need to understand the hard limits within which you're designing so that you have some chance. So thanks, Tina. I think that's a very good question, and it does make me think about what it is that architects use specifications and standards for. And I think the first time I met standards and really realized what they were important for was using NBS and where it references standards, and you made to think, what am I asking for? And I think a good example, and I'll share my screen, is the British standard for screeds, which is very exciting, BS 8204, but it sets out very well what you can expect from a screed, and there's kind of hard limits of what you can really be asking for in terms of what the screed will do for you. And as a designer and architect, you need to know what these limits are so that you can design and specify something that is actually achievable. It's all very well and good me thinking that I want a floor finish that's going to go on for 150 meters, but if it's going to have a bay joint every 8 meters, which is what you get from the BS, then I'm not asking for something realistic. So I think that's maybe the first time that I sort of started to realize how important specifications and standards within specifications were in terms of explaining really what you could achieve as an architect. And often we're going to speak to suppliers and manufacturers, and they can be very good in terms of giving advice, but also they're there to sell something, and products change, and products often change during construction for a good reason sometimes, and sometimes just because something isn't or isn't available. So it's always very good, I think, to have a grasp of the hard limits behind which your specification lives, so that if you change from a screed A person to another screed manufacturer, that you know what you're asking for is genuinely achievable with more than one system. So I think that's where the standards come in really useful for us as architects in terms of knowing what can be done. And yes, I think that's very true. I mean, another key one is BS 6229, which is the code of practice for flat roofs, which changed what feels like relatively recently to me, but I think actually it was 2018 when I looked it up, and which again is talking about what you can and cannot expect a flat roof to do. And you can go and ask a roofer, our roofing supplier, what their roof might do, but actually you always need to know what the backstop's going to be, because insurance and all these things become quite relevant at some point.
Great. Thank you, Richard. That was very interesting. And, when you are kind of talking about the importance, obviously, as well, of specific standards, I wonder, how do you share knowledge in general across Purcell and make sure that everybody kind of knows what needs to be looked at, whether it's standards or other type of information?
Through various different systems, and I think like lots of projects, we're maybe more informal than we really think we ought to be, but we have a lot of internal CPDs and design and technical reviews where we're always pulling on other people in the practice to come and review projects and to talk about what they have and haven't done. And we have an internal technical group who meet monthly, and I think all of us are sort of connected to various networks of people and on different people's kind of news feeds and update systems, and we kind of rely a little bit, I suppose, maybe more than we ought to, on osmosis perhaps to learn some things, but generally by talking to each other, I think, is the main way. And then we have a project delivery plan which is there in the background to help make sure people know what they want to do. In terms of our specification use, a lot of our master specifications, which is a good place to store and share information between teams, are to do with lots of restoration work we do, where new standards and new updated methods of doing things aren't so relevant because the wall's been there since 1780 something, and we're not really going to look for a new BS to sort this out. But one thing we have been working on, and I'm still sharing my screen, so you'll see we've been writing an architectural preamble as an introduction to our specifications. And one thing we have in this is a small piece about the building contract for us to write notes to go at the front of specifications. And something that we have over here is our guidance notes within the org notes for NBS. And here we're pointing out to architects that this is where you can go to get the Construction Information Service to go and get the British standards that you might want to use. I'm afraid, as a small joke, because not quite all the standards are on the CIS, and often that's a sort of interesting thing for us to negotiate, because you have 20-something thousand documents, I think Stephen said, and maybe there's 100,000 really out there. So there's obviously someone's doing a quite careful filter there. But I think that's really what we're doing as a company to try and make sure that we are up to date. And it's, I think, maybe not completely perfect, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Gary, you're maybe slightly better at this than architects are sometimes, but would be interested to hear your point of view too. I mean, often I think, we're not doing rocket science, we're not doing emergency medicine, so things change, but they change relatively slowly.
Okay, great. I guess maybe kind of last question for you. Obviously, we've talked a lot about standards and then specifications, but, kind of over and above standards, what else do you use CIS for?
I used a lot for the RIBA publishing on it, which is something Stephen mentioned in his introduction, and as part of the foundation of it. And I think lots of architects and many of my friends, we all studied using the PDFs of the contract guides, which are available on CIS. And as an architect, they become useful. I was a CAA not very long after I qualified, and it became really useful to have all these guidance documents there to read, and that you're getting the up-to-date version, which is very good. I mean, and actually this week, I went back to look at the Sarah Lupton's guide for the standard building contract just to check what the provisions were for notified or named, as they're now called, contractors, just to see how they fit in with CDP responsibilities. So I think knowing you can go for these books, even just to be able to go and read the RBA jog book, is useful from time to time, because, I mean, construction is a huge field and you don't know all of it ever. And I think it's very good to know that there's a good library somewhere you can go and look things up in it. And part of the thing you need to know is that you don't know everything, and that there is somewhere you can look stuff up. And as everything's moved online, I think having CIS online, we still have real books in the office, but also it's good to be able to go and know you can find the latest version of something.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely good to know there's a lot more than just standards there.
I say I do occasionally read the Architect's Journal, actually, but which is there, although we have an office subscription as well, so it's just another way to go and get your the information. But yes, thanks.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate all your answers. Now, I imagine at Skanska, you have design managers, and then you manage the construction and handover of buildings. So I think Gary, we're going to come to you next. Now, as I understand it, you don't write specs. So how do you use CIS?
So I guess the third thing I should say is that Skanska, we're a very much technology-driven business. Our staff work in construction sites, work from home, occasionally work in the office, and we have to be very mobile and agile. So the notion of buying printed standards and books isn't something we could support at Skanska. We need an online service, and that's fundamental to how we manage our business and how we communicate. That's why the subscription we use for the service is very important to us. Now, as you mentioned earlier, Tina, we don't write specifications, but we have to respond to specifications. So often specifications come into us and the standards are mentioned. And our first job really for design managers would be to drill down into all the standards mentioned, draw down from the subscription service we have, all of the standards in their current version, save those in their project folders, and use those as valuable reference tools. Myself, and along with my other members of my team, when we consider fire, so we look at fire engineering, that's a very broad spectrum: walls, doors, floors, ceilings, ducts, pipes, wires. There isn't a part of a building that isn't touched by fire engineering. And we're expected to be experts in all of those elements, structural and services. Obviously, that would be impossible. I don't think anyone's got the head capacity to take all that information on. So we need all of our reference tools to hand. We use the service to draw down, as I said, all the relevant specifications. One of my team will summarise the specifications, and then we publish on our internal intranet guidance notes, short summaries, and reference back to the standards so people can refer to those if they need to. But also, as part of our construction process, we have many contractors and suppliers provide us technical submissions, and they would refer to a product, could be a door, a duct, a damper, some fire-rated product, and they'll refer to the standard that that's been tested against. And one of our jobs is to check that the standard they've used is correct, and very importantly, the version's correct. Is it current? I see a lot of technical submissions that come across my desk, tested to a standard dated 2015, 2018, 2005, could be any date. And I've got no way of knowing if that's the current standard other than checking my subscription service. So my first job is to look at my technical submissions from suppliers, go to the subscription service, check all of those standards they're referring to are current. Then I think, okay, at least we're on the way. And then I can check my reference points to the standards. So that's a very important part of our week and our day. Along with that, we're looking at public available specifications as well as standards, journals, books, publications. All of the reference material we use is on that subscription service. Quite frankly, we would struggle without the subscription. And it's a fundamental part of our business day that everyone in the business has got access to. And we make strong use of it. I'd like to think we get our money's worth out of our subscription. I think I certainly do, and my team do. It's a valuable tool that we use most days of the week.
That's wonderful to hear. Great. Thank you for that. Now, maybe just to kind of understand a little bit more about what sort of documents, do you receive and check standards from?
So it could be a BBA certificate. It could be a certificate for from a UCAS accredited laboratory. We receive so many different types of information. If you think about it, in a day, I could receive 50 different pieces of information about 50 different structural, mechanical, or electrical elements. I have to be able to have a reference point I could be confident that's going to give me the standard to look at. It's going to tell me the current version. There'll be a narrative about when the standard changed or why it changed. It might tell me it's for the standards for use in non-EU markets only. That's important information. So I might get a standard that looks current, but can I use it in the EU? Surprisingly, some standards they're still available. They're not been withdrawn, but they're for use in non-EU markets. I can only get that nuance of information out of our subscription service. So even if I bought and purchased that standard, I've got no way of referencing whether that's still current or not. So I'm looking at that. So I'm looking at technical submittals, specifications, fire strategies, certification, drawings, the whole spectrum of a design process. All of the output from architects, all of the output from specialist designers for a whole range of elements. So, as I mentioned earlier, I need a subscription service that's got all the documents I need. I need to be confident that it's accurate and up to date, and I need something I can rely on, because as well as checking the information that's coming into me, I'm using that service, the information I can draw down from the subscription, I'm using that to make summary notes. I'm using that for presentations to the wider Skanska. I'm embedding information I receive from the subscription service in PowerPoint slides, briefings, face-to-face sessions, producing guidance documents, internal documents, external documents, all based on the information I've taken from our subscription. I sit on many external panels with other tier 1 contractors, government-backed working parties, task forces, and so on. And I need to be informed when taking part in those forums and groups. And I need a system that I can draw up from my laptop. I need that information transportable. I need it in my pocket all of the time. Yeah, I feel I'm getting that right now.
Wonderful. That is definitely what I like to hear.
You'd soon hear if I wasn't.
Good. What about, working with subcontractors? Do you reference and use standards when you're checking the quality of the work by your subcontractors?
I am, yeah, because that is my only reference point. I'm very strong on telling my team that our opinions are of no consequence, because they are just opinions. We need certified evidence. So I need to be talking with confidence about a standard, and I need to draw that standard down. So I need to be confident when I'm speaking. I need to steer our subcontractors, because often I find while they're engaged as a specialist subcontractor, sometimes their knowledge is a little bit out of date. So I'm very fortunate. I live in what I call a Skanska bubble, where we've got access to these standards and so on. So it's important I'm in that Skanska bubble, because I can make sure that what we're sending out to people is correct, and I can make sure what I'm receiving is correct, and I make sure I can challenge and steer my subcontractors with confidence.
Absolutely.
There's nothing worse than being in a discussion with a contractor and not really knowing the standard that you're discussing, and not really understanding it, and then you're uncertain, you're not confident, and there's probably going to be a bad outcome from that. So for me, it's all that confidence and access to correct, accurate information.
Good. Thank you. The couple of questions maybe that either one of you or both of you can answer, but certainly you, Gary, you've talked a lot about the importance of using current standards. Richard, I believe you mentioned that as well. So I'm just wondering, how do you keep up to date on changes to standards at the moment? What is your process of knowing that a standard has been updated?
Tina, if I'm entirely honest with you, I just check every time I use the standard.
You just log in and
I just
check.
log in and check.
I have a very similar response. I think we have probably both of us have quite wide networks of people who will say, have you seen this? Did you see that? Something changed when stuff does, and the big things will pop up in the press. I think something that I found very interesting about this, that was listening to what Gary was saying as well, was that we're working quite hard at the moment to try to design up from standards rather than down to standards, because I think there's an industry, there's been, I think value engineering particularly sort of tends to drive what's the minimum possible standard, and I think it's a wrong, maybe slightly a negative, but especially for fire, which is your thing. But I think for everything, for accessibility, for almost everything we do, actually you could start from the standard and design upwards rather than what could we get away with. And I was lucky to see Dame Judith Hackett speak not so recently, and she fairly recently, sorry, And she was saying that's the change they're looking for in the fire side of the construction industry at the moment, is that people come in and say, this is what our building will do, not can we get away with that. And I think so the standards become a very useful way to start that process. So you go, what does the standard say in terms of the stability of this wall for us? Or, I mean, everything from building regulations, how many disabled toilets accessible toilets should we have in this building? And why are we designing down to the minimum? Like, no one goes to the car showroom and says, which is the car with the minimum number of airbags? Which car has the minimum safety standard rating for a crash? You go and try and find the best you can possibly really that fits within your budget. And so as architects, I think the standard becomes something that we're looking to use as a place to go up from. And so to be able to go pick up the current version to check, it's still the same version of BS or the 9s or whichever piece of the world we're looking at that moment, and just check. And similarly with the building regulations, to go and check the current regulations, see where the baseline is, and then say, well, actually, where could we be this better than this? Partly because we should just be doing the right thing as much as we possibly can, and also because then the incremental changes that, if standards get improved, are less likely to catch you out of your. I mean, the whole thing we see at the moment in the housing industry about second staircases in towers is because buildings have been designed down to what's the minimum we can achieve, and people haven't really been going, what's the best we could do, So I think that's a very big part from us, is like to take the standard and then go up from it, rather than trying to kind of constantly chip backwards.
Great point. Sorry, Gary.
You're right, Richard. I'm fortunate enough occasion to speak at various conferences, and next Wednesday I'm speaking at the RIBA Fire Safety Conference at their headquarters in Portland Place. And one of the points we'll discuss there is about access to standards, architects' access to standards. And my concern is sometimes the smaller practices may not have a subscription. Then I think, well, if you haven't got a subscription to a service that can provide you all of the standards, how on earth can you be up to date? How can you know where the current position is? And also picking up on, again, what you said, Richard, and you're correct, Dame Judith has talked about us resetting our minds and thinking the standard isn't what we'd like to achieve. The standard is the minimum we must achieve. That's the starting point, not the ending point.
I think we can see that throughout our work. I mean, our chairman came to talk to me last week and said he was, and he's just very particular, the kind of nails that you use to hold down the battens on a slate roof. And he's just saying we should be making sure that in our specifications we do the best thing. The minimum is a thing, actually, because we want buildings to last. I mean, we're working on lots of buildings which have been around for 300-400 years, many 100 and something, and they've been around for a long time because they were built well. And we want to leave buildings that last behind, because as a society we should be wasting less material. And part of the churn of buildings being knocked down and rebuilt because they've sort of started to fall apart is a side of that. And so going, well, this is the minimum standard, but actually we'd like our building to be more than the minimum standard. So yeah, across all the way.
But if you don't actually know what the standard is,
you're completely bugged, part of my French,
and that's the whole basis of why we use our subscription and what I need from that. I need, and I'm going back to that, I've mentioned it a few times now, I need confidence. I need to be accessible, transportable. I need confidence in it, because it certainly is the basis of the message that we're giving out to the rest of Skanska. And then we give out to our customer and our customer's customer. People who go on and use our buildings is really thinking, yeah, we've got the standards. We've got it right. We can look forward. We understand where the changes are. And I look at a standard and I think, well, okay, if that was last looked at in 1987, it might still be current for whatever reason. And some still are current from way back. But then at least you know what your benchmark is and what starting point is. And then it's important about pushing on earlier and harder. But yeah, that all comes from having the correct information in the first instance, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm finding interesting for some corners of our work, I'm finding older standards are quite useful as well. I think that I was looking at some stone, specifying some new stone work recently, and the new standards are kind of focused very much on the new construction industry and the way people are doing that. And we're trying to maintain a wall which is, I think, 200 something years old. And it's actually quite useful to be able to go back and find the old standards, because you can see how things were being done. And I think it's going to become relevant as we get onto the business of starting to refresh buildings that were built in the last 30, 40 years. It would be very good to go back and see, okay, so the fire standards when this building were designed were that. So you can then start to unpick what's probably not very well documented. I mean, I think a big part of what I've learned is the way we document buildings when we give them to people is, I mean, architects almost used to just kind of throw the keys to the client and run. That was sort of how buildings were handed over a bit. Characterized. And contractors think were the same, you know, it was kind of like, here you are, buy. And there's a defects period, but we'll probably not be around very much. And actually we have a much bigger responsibility to society to hand over buildings that people know how to use and that are well documented, so people know when they want to come and adapt them, or just in the normal cycle of their kind of maintenance, keep them running and know what's going to be changed when. And I think all this feeds back to the standards that underpin what we're doing. So yeah, they're quite useful.
You raise a good point there, Richard. Having access to the older standards is very useful when you've got refurbishment, maintenance and so on.
Absolutely.
It allows you to make sense of what went on and why it was made in that way. So there's that looking back job as well as looking forward.
I'm not really a standard, but I've got an amazing book that my granddad gave me, which was, it's a guide to how to modernize your Victorian house. And it's how to board over your nice panel doors.
Did you download that from the subscription?
I didn't. No, my granddad, I don't think it's available as PDF.
Well, maybe he did.
Maybe no, I'm afraid no, he was way before PDFs. But yeah, but it did that.
Send that in the follow-up, Richard, for others to share on that as well. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So aim higher, I guess, in what you're doing, and at the same time, though, know what is current, and also know when you potentially don't need that, depending on the nature of the work. But I guess what I would maybe just kind of mention to everybody is, certainly when you do need to be working off from the most kind of current version of a standard, it's good to understand within CIS you do have the functionality to watch those standards. So you could put them into your project folder and start watching that. So anytime, you know, there is a change, if indeed that standard gets revised and there's a new current version out, then you'll be notified via email. So just good for people to know. I guess, you know, just in the interest of time, maybe just one last question here for you. Now, it sounds like both of you have, you know, kind of used CIS and have worked with NBS for some time now. What would you like to share maybe with others, potentially just kind of starting out? You know, what are some of the things that they should be aware of? What should they be thinking about?
For me, I would say the importance in starting, if you're starting out in a career in engineering and construction, is not to try to remember everything. You'll fill your head far too much more than you can possibly manage. So the key to learning and growing in this industry is to understand things. Because once you understand something, you'll always understand it. And understanding is very different from learning and remembering. So you understand something and think about where your reference points are. Think, I understand the process, I know where my reference points are, and use those reference points. So that's what I would say. Lean heavily on the support and information you've got. Make sure you're making good at you're using your subscription service regularly, and just finding your way through the information that's available there. There's some very interesting pathways you can take. Be careful you don't start going down rabbit holes and researching more than you need to, but just try to understand the basic principles of engineering and just keep an eye out to where your reference points are.
I think that's excellent advice. I often think don't really need to remember anything. You just need to remember where you put it down, which means know where your standards are, but also know where your own documentation is. And I think also, I mean, talk to your colleagues and really find out what really worked for them, and always be prepared to be the person who asks the question, I think, because often you'll sit in a room with, I've sat in rooms with 10 colleagues and someone has said something and you find out later that no one in the room knew what they were talking about, but everyone was too scared to ask. And it's just so deadly. If someone mentions a standard you haven't heard of or anything you haven't heard of, I think you just have to be the person who feels it's okay to ask the question, because probably half the other people here don't know what we're talking about, especially when things get very technical, which often things can get very technical very quickly. And it's important that they do, but also it's important that people are forced to pull back from time to time and say, by that piece of jargon, I actually mean there are 4 of these. Or, you know, sometimes you need that. So I think, yeah, very good advice, Gary. Thanks.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you both, Gary and Richard. That was some sound advice, certainly there.
Thank you, Tina, for hosting
sharing.
us. No, and I thank you for your lovely view.
Absolutely. Before we kind of close here, I would just maybe take the opportunity to tell everybody about the Accurus Customer Academy that we have. If you do want to kind of learn a little bit more about CIS specifically, and some of the things that you can do there to, as we've just talked about today, keep up to date and all of that, then you do have an opportunity to do so. So I will briefly just share my screen and show you, and in the follow-up, we'll send you a link to there as well. Okay, so on the screen, you're hopefully seeing the Accurus Customer Academy there. So I do want to just highlight that you have the opportunity to learn about CIS specifically. Accurus provides a couple other products as well, so you'll see those here. But if you want to, you know, attend some of our monthly CIS webinars, for example, you have the option here to go to live training and then sign up for a session. And on the home page, which is the resource collections that you're seeing here, we have, you know, a lot of kind of videos and guides and just resources for you to learn more about CIS. So here, if you go to Construction Information Service, that will bring up some of the resources that we have for you to learn more on your own time, essentially. So whenever you have a couple minutes. The videos here are short, as are the guides, so it'll be a few minutes to learn. And with that, I shall hand back over to Stephen.
Thank you very much, Tina. That was really a fascinating discussion there. Thanks to all our panelists today. Please pop a message in the chat if you'd like to know more about either NBS Chorus or CIS, whether it's in terms of pricing options or different content sets, the support options that Tina mentioned. So please pop that in the chat. Now we've got 2 web URLs on the screen. If you want to just have a little browse around, find out more about Chorus, the nbs.com/chorus, and then learn more about just like the pure CIS side of things. We've got accurustech.com/solutions/CIS. But if you just put the words into Google, you'll almost certainly end up at the right pages. And you can always drop us an email as well. If you'd like to send a bigger message, then you can sort of pop it in the chat. You've got the info at the nbs.com and support@accurustech.com. But thank you for joining us today. This webinar will be available on demand afterwards if you want to share with colleagues, and we'll send an email out with all of the links as well. So thank you very much and goodbye.